What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get.
Welcome to episode 1893 of Toronto Mic'd. 1893. An award-winning podcast, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery. Order online at greatlakesbeer.com for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Visit palmapasta.com for more. The Toronto Maple Leafs Baseball Club. Get your butts to Christie Pitts this summer. It is the best entertainment. No ticket required. Grab a dog, grab a beer, enjoy some fantastic professional baseball. Fusion Corp's own Nick Iones. He's the host of Building Toronto Skyline. And Mike and Nick, two podcasts that you ought to listen to. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, I believe he's officially making his Toronto Mic'd debut. It is Gerry Scott.
Hello, Mike.
How's it going, Gerry? Yeah, you know, I left that gap, and then I'm like, no, say hi to Gerry so he knows to come in. How you doing, buddy?
Everything is going well. It's beautiful out here on the West Coast. And by the time we listen to all your sponsors for this award-winning podcast, there's not much time left for me.
You know what? You should be listed amongst the sponsors. What do I need to do to make that happen, Gerry Scott?
Well, geez, you've kind of put me in an awkward position. Is there any room left for sponsors? Do I have to line up? Is there a waiting list?
Listen, it's a highest bidder, but let me just let the listenership know how we're connected, and then we're going to get into it. Okay, we're going to talk about your new book. We're going to talk about some myths and mistakes that trip up Canadian Snowbirds. But I want to make sure the listenership knows that I do produce your podcast. We've been working together for years, but this is what I love to tell people: like, we're buddies, we're friends. You made the trek from the West Coast. You came to Toronto to appear at TMLX, whatever it was, the day I turned 50. You were at Great Lakes Brewery for some fresh craft beer, for some delicious Palma pasta, and to wish me a 50th birthday. I'll never forget that, Gerry.
Well, let me, before I answer all your questions and respond to that, let me have a sip of my one and only sponsor, Tang, which is making a comeback in the world, competing against freshly squeezed orange juice.
Thanks to Artemis too.
For Tang. Just kidding. It is. I don't even know if we can buy Tang on the shelves anymore. Well, Mike, obviously this relationship is important to us as it is important to you, and that's what friends do. When someone turns 50, it's a great milestone, and what the heck? I mean, last time I checked, there was planes flying out of Vancouver to Toronto daily.
But Gerry, just to break it down, so where exactly in British Columbia do we find you today? I'm assuming you're in BC. Like, where are you?
Well, yesterday I was in Vancouver. Today I am in Qualicum Beach. Qualicum Beach is a beautiful community on Vancouver Island. My wife and we built a home here in the last few months. And I grew up on Vancouver Island, and my wife who grew up in Kamloops, wanted to move to Vancouver Island. We've been spending some time here the last couple of years in the Qualicum area, and being an employee, I just whatever her decision is, I just support her, and I do love it. All joking aside, for all those Canadian snowbirds coming home and looking for places to build these beautiful lives, Qualicum Beach it's arguably one of the nicest towns in BC.
No, I mean, that island, Vancouver Island is the proper term for this. I have been to Victoria, so that's on Vancouver Island, right?
That's correct. That is the capital of British Columbia. I believe it was New Westminster way back in the day, and I don't know who makes these changes, but anyhow, it became Victoria, which, like I say, we grew up on the island. It's a beautiful place. I mean, especially this area here. It's not as much density. It's quieter. It takes you 4 minutes to get to your dentist from the house. Mike, you'll love this. There's so many mountain biking trails. We have we're on the golf course, an area called Pheasant Glen. And the family that had this vision way back in '96 when they bought the golf course, the Dutton family, have done just an incredible job. And we basically bought this lot sight unseen. We knew the area. And we had friends show up while we were in Maui and basically pick the lot for us and where we should build our home. So it's a beautiful area, and we look forward to hosting yourself and your wife and whoever travels in your entourage out to the West Coast here one day.
I might not leave. Like, it sounds amazing. I'm going to guess you don't get the minus 25 wind chill days that we get here.
Well, they might, but we have a solution for that. And it's called Maui.
Tell me more. Like, you like Vancouver Island is not sufficient for you. It still gets too cold for you, Gerry Scott, and you got to make your way to Hawaii.
It's not so much the cold weather, because I think it's like, if those who are familiar with the Seattle area, it can be very damp, and yeah, we would get snow occasionally. We just got such a huge commitment to the families that we work for on Maui, and they use a term over there called ohana. It's kind of like a tribe, and once you become part of that, that's if we had to divide our heart into two places or two homes, we would say Maui is as much as home as Qualicum Beach in Vancouver.
Does Maui have an NHL team, Gerry?
Well, you should have asked the question, does Vancouver and Toronto have professional hockey?
It's a big day here. So we're going to be all over the place, but obviously we're going to talk about this new book of yours, Best of the Snowbirds Expat Radio Podcast. And it's for Canadians heading south, as you do. And I got a bunch of questions about this. But today is the announcement. Cheka, the guy who was running the Coyotes like back a while ago, is supposed to be running our hockey operations. And then Matt Sundin is part of this deal, but both of these guys are going to report to Keith Pelly. I don't know. I'm no expert, but this sounds like a recipe for disaster. I think we've got some tough times ahead. Are things tougher in Vancouver than they are in Toronto? I highly doubt it could be as bad.
Sadly, I mean, we can joke about the Maple Leafs and the Vancouver Canucks. When these teams are winning and they're making deep playoff runs, which either one of us have done for a while now.
Yeah.
We are invested. We love it. And we've had the opportunity to work for a few of the players over the years, and it does hurt. I mean, it really bothers us. I mean, we're all behind the Montreal Canadiens these days, so we're looking for a bus to jump on. But yeah, I don't know if it's the right thing for Toronto. I mean, I'm sure these processes in today's world have to be defined. And I know there was all kinds of talk. Doesn't Max Domi not Max Domi, but Ty Domi? Well, he's been hired as well. Unknown position. I hadn't heard that, but that might be true. I haven't listened to my sports radio today. But here's a wild mind blow for you. So, just what day was it? I've lost track of my days. I guess it was Saturday. So Saturday, my daughter who lives in Montreal, she had finished her exams at McGill. Like, she's gonna graduate. Like, I'm gonna go to her convocation later this month. Can you believe that, Gerry? Congrats. Unbelievable when our babies grow up and become adults.
So it's wild to me. Like, she's actually doing a little trip to Europe, and she was taking the train from Montreal to Union Station here in Toronto, and then she's taken that up to go to the YYZ. I'm told it's not YYZ, to fly to Dublin. She's already there. She's having a great time. But all this is to say that I'm meeting up with her, and then I realized, and this is just to put things in perspective, since that adult woman, since she was born, the Toronto Maple Leafs have won exactly 2 playoff series. Think about that. So she's 22. She's in Ireland right now. She's graduated from McGill. And 2 playoff series won by Like the Montreal Canadiens have won half that in the past 24 hours.
Yeah, and I know, and it seems like 1967 was the last time they won the Stanley Cup, and of course out here in Vancouver, we've been waiting for years. We've had three opportunities over the last 50 years, but it's too bad, and I got to tell you that there's such a fine line between winning and losing because Toronto's had so many great teams along the way that if you look back, the only thing that they didn't do was win a Stanley Cup. You guys still had incredible success. When these general managers get fired, and I know we're talking about Toronto Maple Leafs, but even Vancouver Canucks, okay, we've had some problems in the locker room where we got rid of players like JT Miller and Quinn Hughes, who had a big game last night. I almost want to see Quinn Hughes not do well, not happy in Minnesota, and then he can go sign with whoever he's going to sign with, and then Minnesota's got, has been raped of all these great assets to acquire. But I don't understand it. When you say you're going to go into a building, if you're committing to a building, a rebuild, I don't understand why they didn't commit to the general manager. I mean, Patrick Alvin, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, and that's what sports opinions are, is for us to disagree on another thing. But if I was the owner of the club and we had a plan, and here's the plan going forward, and now we're going into a draft and we might get the first round pick, we got a 25% chance. Well, people in Vancouver are so pessimistic. We believe we've already lost. The wheel's already spun and we've already lost. We're going to get number 1 or 3. And I guess this year it doesn't matter. Apparently 1 and 3 is all great picks. It's tough being a fan. The Raptors lost last night.
I know.
That was kind of a slim hope for the town of Toronto. So I don't know. Sports is tough. I always say in my next life, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be a better father, better husband, a better person. I'll build churches. I will build schools. I will get more heavily into music. No sports for this guy on the second go around. That's how stressful it is out here in the West.
Smart plan. Okay, so speaking of plans, let's dig into who the hell you are and what's going on in your world, which is highly impressive and inspiring to yours truly here. But just for the people who don't know the name Gerry Scott, who the hell are you? And then following that introduction, tell us exactly what is the Snowbirds Expat Radio Podcast, and then we'll dive into the book, and I got some questions. So who are you, Gerry?
Well, I'm the second child of 5 kids. Mom and Dad were hardworking, laboring people. We settled in Ucluelet on Vancouver Island. And like a lot of small town kids, the first dream is to play in the NHL, but unfortunately we didn't have a rink. So apparently you have to learn how to skate. But, we grew up in a great community on Vancouver Island. We got to play every sport. We were a small town. We had I think we would have had anywhere from 1,500 people. So really small town. We got to drive to Port Alberni, take time off from school, Port Alberni and all these other schools on the island. And eventually I made my way to Vancouver in 1983. And I'll back it up 2 years because the first time I ever went, before I went to move to Vancouver, I got to experience Maui, 1980, 81. And the days counting up to the days we were leaving, they had the assassination of John Lennon, which still kind of sticks in my mind. And I remember listening to CKDA in Victoria, and they made the announcement that John Lennon had been shot. And you and I spent so much time talking about music. I mean, I love music, the rock and roll of our era, 60s, 70s, and 80s. But yeah, so I made my way to Vancouver. I made my way into the financial services industry as an advisor in 1993, I believe it was. And fast forward, what is today? Today is
May the 4th be with you.
Yes, May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. For all those Trekkies out there. Yeah. So I made my way out. I made my way out to Vancouver, made my way into the financial services business. Maui was always entrenched, stamped, as an 18-year-old kid or 19-year-old. I guess I was 21, 22 when I went to Maui in 1981, 81. The filming of Magnum PI was in its first season for all those people that were Thomas Magnum fans back in the day. So Maui always left an impression on me, and I came into this business, and I was a Canadian advisor for many, many years, and then we had just moved to a dealership that allowed advisors to be duly licensed, to look after Americans or Canadians returning or Americans moving to Canada. And I had a conversation. I got a phone call from our dealer, and they said, "Hey, I hear you spent a lot of time in Maui." And by that time, we were pretty entrenched in going back and forth, spending a lot of time there. And it really was an 8 second decision to say, "Hey, you know what?" They said, "Gerry, you could be licensed in United States, and you seem to know a lot of Americans and people returning." And from the time I put the call down, we started the process 8 seconds later to become a duly licensed advisor. And we've just continued to build all our expertise and knowledge of not only being licensed and taking qualifying exams to become portfolio managers in the United States, planners in the United States. We had the practical experience of what Canadians are dealing with when they do go to the States or when they do return. Sorry, just a little bit, another glass of Tang. They can come back here.
I think you can buy Tang on the shelves of our grocery stores. I'm pretty sure you can.
Well, we know it's not in the refrigeration section.
No, it's not. I worked as a grocery clerk for 5 years. I can tell you that is a grocery item.
Yes, it is. Yeah, so we made our way. We made our way to becoming this cross-border firm, and more importantly, the more that I was spending time in the States, I was realizing that how confusing it is for snowbirds. There was always these things of you can spend 6 months less a day in United States as a Canadian. And I think that's where Canadians just kind of, people that are very successful, or let's call them the alpha dogs, they get entrenched with a little bit of knowledge and they believe that they know all the angles. And not only they're confident enough for themselves, but they start to lecture people and be this resource for others that aren't alpha dogs. And that's where this problem is created. So we created the Snowbird US Day Tracker app. We created it for our clients. It soon became an app that everybody was downloading. And be careful what you ask for, because now you have 2 full-time jobs.
All right, so let's slow that down a bit, though. So there's an app, like somebody could pause this podcast now, and it's this app. What's it called again? The Snowbirds Expat app. What is it called?
Yeah, it's called the. Geez, Mike, let me.
You should know the name of your app, Gerry. Come on.
US. Let me just
get that name right, and then
for some reason out here in the West Coast, it's a little earlier than Toronto.
True.
It's called the Snowbirds US Day Tracker.
Okay. The Snowbirds US Day Tracker, and this is obviously on it's on Android or Apple. You can download this app. Okay, but tell people, like, right now, because we're going to get into it, but if somebody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to contact my friend and client, Gerry Scott?
Yeah, well, what they do is that through the app, there's always these little radio buttons in the top right-hand corner or left-hand corner. In our case, it's right-hand corner. And it allows you to contact us and basically ask your question. And we basically provide a response back to these people. But, as we built this app and we had these features, Mike, we had things like, there's rules around, tax. You don't want to be seen as a U.S. tax person if you spend too much time in Canada. And that was the number one reason why we built the app, is that over a 3-year period, you track all your days, and there's a formula that determines how much time have you spent in the last 3 years. So you have to stay below this 183 days. And if you exceed it, this is where I don't know if we've created confusion or we've tried to educate people, depending on the end user. But you're required it's in your best interest to prove you got closer ties to Canadian soil than U.S. soil, or be subject to U.S. tax. And, so Mike, you're dealing with 2 tax systems. You're dealing with the Canadian system and you're dealing with the U.S. tax system. And there is a treaty between the 2 countries, but they really don't, like, the more we tell you, the more we confuse you. That's the difficult thing about what we're saying because, I could tell somebody what I see as being very cut and dry based on my experience, but it's just opened up 100 questions.
I think I have
And
100
then,
questions. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
yeah, so you've got tax, Mike, you got to deal with. Now you've got immigration. And, under this current administration, we're hearing all this terrible social media, what is true and what is untrue. But as a Canadian entering the United States, you're entering as a visitor. You're not entering to work. And I think depending on the further south you go, they have a border between the United States and other countries as well. And same thing, these people are entering the country. Are they entering as a visitor or are they entering to work? So people have to realize that when you enter the United States, it's a privilege from an immigration point of view. So you have restrictions there. And now what Snowbirds have been doing, Mike, they've been going there for so many years. They're doing the same thing, but now it's being questioned. Are you visiting? Or are you going down there to live there? And if you're going down to live there, are you working? And in this book, we were forced to write the book because it's just getting so complicated, and we didn't have enough time to spend half an hour with everybody. Of all the users on the app, that would pretty well take care of the rest of my life answering these people. Yeah, it just got confusing. So we had to come up and explain to people immigration, tax, healthcare, all these things. How do they work for a Canadian who's spending time in the States?
Right, because there's so many myths and mistakes that can trip up what we call a... By the way, did you ever meet Anne Marie?
I haven't.
Have you ever seen Anne Marie perform live?
I haven't.
Okay, just that's the first time I heard the term snowbird.
There's so many. I mean, Anne Murray has been an icon in Canada forever. So, that was my parents listening. So it's still entrenched of all the songs that she wrote. Yeah.
Well, that's the big one. She's and snowbird. But would you identify yourself, Gerry, as a snowbird?
Well, I actually took it a step further because we built the apps. We have the podcast, which you've been producing for many years now and doing an excellent job. And I'm surprised we haven't been up for any awards for best podcast.
Hey, it took me 13 years to win my first prestigious podcast award, Gerry. Come on. Have you been at it 13 years?
Yeah, but I thought that if someone like yourself came along, that would kind of move me to the top of the list and I wouldn't have to be as committed as you are.
Oh, yeah. So tell me that extra step you took that you don't identify as a snowbird.
Yeah,
and then...
so what I did, like a lot of Canadians that are doing business in the States, I wanted to make sure if I'm going to become this cross-border guru, I wasn't going to be the guy that's kicked out of the country. So we've incorporated the apps. There's actually a second app. There's a Snowbird Canada Physical Presence Tracker. All those Americans coming to Canada, they get their PR status and they got to track their days in order to qualify and be physically present in the country. So we built the app for them, the podcast, and now the book. So we've incorporated it all out of Maui, which allows us to qualify for an E2 visa. So if we were thinking at one time, hey, wouldn't it be great to move to Maui full time? What a beautiful dome to grow up in or grow old in, and then our daughter started having kids, and and we realized that exiting Canada, it's expensive to stay and more expensive to leave. So, but we still have the E2 visa, so there's no discrepancies. When we are down there, we are 100% legal. We are performing our duties with the books and the podcasts and the app. So we've done everything legally, and once again went through that experience that people can leverage off of.
Okay, I just want to do a reset here because there's so many things flying around. But okay, so we talked about the app, which people can download now. But there's also the podcast, which I produce, and the podcast is the Snowbirds Expat Radio Podcast. And people can hear from like experts talking about these myths and these mistakes that can trip up a Canadian snowbird. Like there's lots of, if you're a snowbird or considering being a snowbird, you got to listen because all the best practices and advice from experts is there. But then tell me how that led to the book. So you have the podcast, because the name of the book, am I right, Gerry? The name of the book is Best of the Snowbirds Expat Radio Podcast. So is this basically the best stuff in the podcast made it to the book?
Yeah. Mike, what we were able to do is that, this is really about crossing the border. Either you're heading north, heading from the south to the north or north to the south. So what we did was there's two different audiences. It's the snowbirds heading south for the winters. And then you also have these Canadians and expats moving up to Canada permanently after being in the States most of their life. So we took the podcast is really for that audience. But what we did was we realized that I'll use the word we. I thought it would be kind of neat if I just built this book, one book for two audiences. And then we started realizing that, boy, if it's confusing out there, if we have one audience reading or two audiences reading the one book, we're going to confuse people even more. So we actually put it into two books. And the first book is available now on Amazon, and my understanding it'll be available in all the bookstores everywhere, including Toronto, eventually. Yeah, so that's how big this is. Toronto, wow.
That's the big smoke, Gerry.
Yeah, I'll tell you. It's who'd ever think that kid from Ucluelet would be, never mind pronouncing big words like Toronto, but now we'll have a book there. So the book was, we took all these wonderful people, these great professionals, very intelligent people, maybe immigration lawyers, accountants, cross-border accountants. And we basically, like yourself, we became the host and just asked so many questions. And I'm a sponge when it comes to knowledge and education. I love to learn. So we took all that information, including the blogs that we were writing internally on the wealth management platform. We took it all together and we put it into two books, one for snowbirds and one for Canadians returning, expats moving up to Canada because they believe Canada is better. And there might be some truth behind that at times, depending on what you're looking for. So that's what we did. We put it into two books, and the second book is we're just getting it approved through our dealer, because it is heavy on the tax side. If you can imagine tax, immigration, and just making sure everything that we're saying is fairly accurate. And keep in mind, I'm not an immigration lawyer or an accountant, so we're not here to give advice. We're here to share the relationships with the audience.
Okay, so the proper title, I took a note here because it does get a little crazy here. It's called Best of the Snowbirds Expat Radio Podcast, Canadians Heading South for the Winters. What you don't know will hurt you. Look, I don't like pain. We're going to get into some thoughts on the current administration and how that might have changed things. We're going to get into that later. But I mean, when I'm listening to this podcast, which is now a book and people can get it. It sounds like it's on Amazon right now, but hopefully coming to a bookstore near you, and with all these best practices, there's things like the 12-month rolling calendar. And you talked about these dates and you mentioned the tax, but am I right, Gerry? It's not just avoiding having to pay US tax, right? But also I know a lot of snowbirds who everything to them is, and I'm in Ontario, so we call it OHIP. What do they call it in BC?
I'm sorry, repeat that. You said you call it what?
We call it OHIP, right? This is the Ontario, our provincial health plan. But what do they call it in British Columbia?
Yeah, MSP.
Okay, see, it's funny. I only know it as OHIP, but I know O stands for Ontario, so every province has their own version of this. But how do you ensure, is there some different rules to make sure that you always have your OHIP, which I'll call it OHIP because it's Ontario, but your provincial health coverage? That's so important to Canadians that if they need health services, they won't get a big fat invoice at the end of the hospital visit or whatever.
Well, everything we do, there's going to be, we'll talk about healthcare for a second here. There's gaps. And I'll use the word gaps. There's gaps in healthcare services that you have. I know that in the province of British Columbia, and I think Ontario is the same way, and we will be corrected if we're wrong. And I love being wrong, by the way. Ask my wife. But the issue is that how long can you be out of province? Is it 7 months? If it's 7 months, I think in British Columbia it's 7 months as well. But yeah, you do have healthcare when you leave, but there's going to be gaps in that services and what is going to be covered when you go to the hospital. And that's why these companies like Manulife and different travel insurance providers have been making a lot of money on these healthcare plans to make sure that if you are gone for 3 months or whatever the case is, you've got adequate coverage. And we know that when you're in the hospital, the stories of people of almost having to remortgage their house when they're down south. We did an episode with a Manulife wholesaler on travel insurance, and we talked about selling travel insurance through the app. And I think there's providers out there like BCAA is a big provider out here in the West. We just didn't want to get into that part of it because it's so heavy on the administration side. If something goes wrong, which you buy that for that reason. And then if you went into a situation where the insurance companies say, well, we're not going to pay it. You didn't read the fine print. We thought the liability was too big, but I can't tell people enough that the travel insurance is there to protect you from financial hardship and the importance of it. I mean, we used to do these golf trips down south, and we got to the point we said, listen, guys, if you don't have travel insurance, you're not coming. Because if you hurt yourself and you're drinking and you jump out of your golf cart and you break your ankle, they're going to blame us. So if you don't have travel insurance, you can't go. Simple as that. We want people to be grown up and not trying to save a few dollars and cut corners. The younger you are, the cheaper travel insurance is. The older you are, it gets to the point, Mike, where people stop going to the States because the insurance premiums are way too high for them to be down there. And any reoccurring conditions, if you have heart issues or anything, those factors are taken into that the insurance company says, well, we're going to insure you for this, but we're not going to insure you for that.
Okay, so I want people to get this book, listen to the podcast, get the book, download the app, reach out to Gerry if you got questions. You're the guy. I'm here to vouch for you. This guy, can I swear on my show, Gerry? You don't mind, right? This guy knows his shit, okay? Gerry Scott, swear by this man. But I will tell people some of the stuff, and then you can speak to what you want, and then we can get to I want to talk music with you too. I don't want to just talk about this, right? Okay. So you alluded to the big thing, which is you don't want to be a snowbird who accidentally becomes a U.S. tax resident. So there's great advice and tips you should follow on how you can avoid accidentally becoming a U.S. tax resident, right? Because that'll hit you in the wallet, right, Gerry?
Yeah, people believe that. So you have to understand, the United States is one of two countries, and don't ask me who the other country is because it's a country in Africa that I can't pronounce. But there's two countries in this world that will tax you based on citizenship, and it doesn't matter where you live. So if an American is living in Canada and they're still American citizen, they're required to file a U.S. return, Canadian return, and a American return. So as a Canadian, if you go down to the States and you spend, you're not keeping track of your days and you're not filing the 8840, which proves you got closer ties to Canada, they could deem you as a U.S. resident for tax purposes. And you might not owe any tax, but you have to go through this process of filing a U.S. tax return and a Canadian tax return. So it's going to cost you, if anything. So that's a problem. There's foreign tax credits that will offset any kind of income, but Canadians, well, I don't make any money in this country. I'm not entitled to pay you any tax. Well, it doesn't work like that in the United States. So that's where that's why you say you keep track of the app, you keep track of all your days. The app is designated to half of it as being the IRS and making sure that you know where you stand for how much time you spend over the last 3 years, and then fill out your 8840, file it, send it in. It's not a tax return. It's a simple form that you can fill out. All these things are intimidating. The questions and the answers, I'll give you the answers to every question. Canada,
Right.
Canada, 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 Canada. There, it's done.
Well,
You
listen,
build it from-
maybe before we get to music, I'll tell you what I think of all that. So, real talk coming very soon here. But just to tease the book a little bit, I'll talk about if you own or sell U.S. property, because I know people who own property in the U.S. and that's where they go. People seem to really hate our winters, Gerry, but we'll get to that in a minute. So, basically, there's some great stuff in the book about buying, holding, and selling U.S. property. If you're a Canadian snowbird, of course, we talked about this healthcare. What you need to know before you need the healthcare in the U.S., and then estate planning across the border, protecting your family and your assets. And there's a big thing you mentioned off the top, when you cross the line regarding working in the U.S., it's one thing you're a visitor, but some snowbirds cross the line and they don't even realize that they're actually working in the U.S. And then here's a big one, this chapter 8, maintaining Canadian residency while living across border life, because you just said Canada, Canada, Canada. So there's a whole bunch of great stuff, including something I think that's maybe more common than before. I'm going to ask you in a minute, but snowbirds being turned back at the U.S. border, like how to avoid that scenario. Imagine you got your Hawaiian shirt on, you're wearing your flip-flops, you're heading to be a visitor, and the border people say, go home, Canuck, right? So all this in the book.
Yeah, and I'll quickly touch base on about this people being returned, showing up at the border. Maybe they're flying down or they're driving down. It's very common for people in Eastern Canada to drive down to Florida, take the 3-day trip and bring the dog with them, the whole works. There's nothing, we don't have to scare you, because there's nothing worse than second level screening and being called into that room and being asked another level of questions. There's nothing more stressful. And we did a couple of reels where, we can't really prepare you for it. We just say, just try and organize yourself as best as you can and know the rules and ask. Because when you're being brought in, that's an immigration issue. Okay, you do this every year and you seem to be spending 5-6 months a year down in the States. Are you working? Are you retired? And a lot of 50-year-old plus people like to believe, well, they want to use the word semi-retired. Well, what does that mean? Semi-working? So you're going to work when you're down here? Yeah, but I'm working for my Canadian employer. Yeah, but you're basically providing duties on U.S. soil for a Canadian company. And the people say, well, how would that be subject to U.S. tax? You're working. So it's really, people have to understand why healthcare, immigration, tax, how this all comes together, because it doesn't come together on some system in the States. Immigration, in a lot of cases, isn't talking to tax, and tax isn't talking to immigration. So the book was really there to design you and prepare you to understand how this is all connected and how you should be careful, because there's nothing worse. And I'll quickly touch base about Canadians selling properties in the United States too, because demographically it's shifted. We can say it's based on politics. We can say it's based on increasing costs, insurance costs, and the monthly fees you have to pay to be a part of that community. But really a big one is our kids do not want the place in Maui. If you have a house in Maui, they don't want it. They want to travel the world. They don't want to be tied down to high fees and costs and go to the same place all the time. And maybe our parents, if they had that lifestyle, it was a great environment to grow up in. But the kids want something different nowadays. They want the money. So now parents are selling their homes for the first time in many years, and there's taxes and there's taxes that are being withheld that you have to file a certificate to get that money back. And it's not based on a capital gains, it's based on the value of the property. So these are all the things. We're not turning into experts. And there is a way to read this book. You go through the sections and you listen to the podcast, and the people that you hear on the podcast, write their name down on the top page as the go-to professional that you need to maybe have a bigger overview of what's going on here and how this is really how this comes back to your situation.
All right, now may I proceed with some real talk, Gerry Scott?
Yes, please.
Okay. About a little over a year ago, the Americans re-elected, was it number 45 is also number 47, if I have my numbers correct in the President of the United States annals here. So he started talking about Canada as the 51st state. Do you remember this, Gerry?
It's terrible. It was a terrible thing to go through, and we all have our views, and I'll be careful with my views.
Well, you don't have to be careful, but go ahead.
I'm going to tell you that there's a lot of wonderful people in United States that we call their friends and Ohanas and brothers, and I would say that the current administration does not reflect what the American people, who they are, and what they stand for.
But I'm curious if you, because in your line of work, you've been doing this a long time, Canadians going south, Americans coming up here, you've been covering both sides of the border. What did you notice, like professionally speaking, what did you notice when the 51st state rhetoric was ratcheted up? And I don't know about what's going on in BC, but here a lot of people said, screw it, we're not crossing that border until there's a regime change. Like, I talked to many, many people who are doing this. Did you notice snowbirds staying home?
I think there is that, but I think the other side of it is that Canada was having its problems too, and our current administration, love them or hate them, it sure seems to be it seems to be a very popular choice amongst Canadians to say that, when they're giving you standing ovations, Canada, hopefully Canada's on the right track. But I have to say that there is a part of the population that is spending a lot of time in the States.
Sure.
And they've talked about things like the Snowbird Act, which is going to allow Canadians to spend more time in the United States. They keep on hearing about this thing that's in front of Congress and the Senate, the whole works, but it's never going to happen. It's too complicated to have it happen. But there are a few people out there that said, wait a second, we're going to become the 51st state so that I can move freely amongst the country. And if I want to I move to Maui full time without any exit taxes. I think there's people thinking, okay, a lot of us have thought about it, but no one wants to talk about it. So I think there was this population that said, well, wait a second, what does that look like? And then after a while, I think everybody realized that it was so disrespectful, and
Gerry,
it physically can never happen.
I need the names of those people because I will find them and I will kick them in the shins.
Well, selfishly, I was one of those people that said, well, wait a second here. Because, Canada was divided as well. Like when you're out here in the West and, when it comes to a federal election and our votes, we're going to feel sorry for ourselves, but the election's over by the time the polls open in the West.
Right.
So I think Canada as a country, I thought the only way that we could ever get united was through a World Series run with only one Canadian-born player on the team. That was United Canada. So I think Canada was in a difficult state too when it came to trying to unite this country. And we were all thinking in the back of our mind, never mind being the 51st state, Mike, we were also talking about, well, what would BC look like if it was a standalone state, standalone country? And Alberta and, Quebec has talked about separatism, being separating.
Well, sure.
Since I remember being in Winnipeg the night of the referendum.
Right.
So I think Canadians selfishly, when we're in a state, when we're thinking selfishly about our own taxes, our own situation, I think we have internal problems. Canada has problems. And I hope, and we've got friends that have, very close friends that was an ex-premier of the province and very left-wing thinking, and we're very right-wing thinking people. So we get to talk politics at a very high level, and I love to listen to people's opinion. I think it was hurtful, Mike, and I know that you took a pretty hard stance on it. For us, I said, listen, I love the people of Hawaii too much to be staying away.
And I don't even mean, I don't want it to come across like I'm beating you up. Like you're an adult who
No.
made choices. I make a choice for myself. Okay. So I will admit to you that when I find out somebody I care about is going to the States for pleasure, I don't like it. Like, boo-hoo, Mike, get over it. Like, you're an adult making a decision. I don't like it. But I get what you're saying. You own property in Maui and you love the people there, and I'm guessing you love the climate there.
Mike, I got to tell you something, and we don't own property there. We have a very close
okay.
friends, and we've rented out Onohana for year round for many, many, many years now,
Gotcha.
and it really comes down to money. I mean, the home that we want to buy on the beach is $20 million, so we're not going to settle for anything less. And will we buy at this stage in our life? But it just comes down to the administration. We're not going to agree with the approach they take. I mean, it's just outright so disrespectful on how he's treating everybody along the way, and the people that are. So it's a difficult time for the American people, but it's not going to take away from our relationships, and we got to be careful, because sometimes what's worse in the current administration is someone who stands so strongly behind the current administration. Those are so. I think we have to be careful, but American people are divided. I mean, we talk to a lot of our friends, and they're not having Thanksgiving together. Not this year or ever again. They're too divided. And I got to tell you, there's a great book out there called The Relentless Wave, and it was a John McCain story. And one of his close friends was Teddy Kennedy. They agreed. One was a Republican, one was a Democrat. They agreed to disagree on everything. But at the end of the day, they put their country first, and they were best of friends. And it was such a great book and story to understand we can disagree. We can disagree on politics. But someone made a point the other day that the Liberals basically suspended the federal tax on fuel to bring the cost down. And someone close to me said, well, that was a conservative idea. And I said, isn't that great that we're actually listening to each other and
Right.
taking a great idea is a great idea?
Right. Because Gerry, if that's a Pierre Poilievre idea, he sure doesn't have the power to make that happen. So I also love the idea that good ideas can come from anywhere. You can't dismiss an idea simply because it comes from the opposition.
Yeah, and I also think, Mike, that when I talk about political stripes, I think what we have to do in our position on the wealth management side is really be nonpartisan.
Right.
But we're also looking for great leadership. And how I manage things with friends who are supporters of the current administration, I just say, listen, Canada had its problem, but I think we have great leadership right now. And that's my opinion. I'm not going to back down, and I have to defend my opinion with some close friends that are strong conservatives. But it doesn't divide us. He might tease me about it. But in the United States right now, I really believe I don't think they have very good leadership. That's what it comes down to. And leadership, all we can think about as kids is the Pied Piper. That wasn't a great solution. It turned out to be, the story was not a great solution.
Right. Well, I'm glad we're talking about this because I feel the division, like it's palpable. And I know how I feel about things, but I'm never afraid to talk to somebody who has different. Now, I have exceptions. My rules are what the third rail I can't debate you on are things if you're homophobic, if you're racist, if you're anti-trans, like there are certain, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic. There are certain things I simply cannot negotiate with you that I find this is you are wrong. This is hateful. This is wrong. But when it comes to policies and stuff, I actually I talked to another client of mine named Nick Iones for a podcast called Mike and Nick, because his perspective on things comes from further to the right than mine, and we disagree on many things, but we have conversations about it, and then we find out in these conversations we agree more often than we realize, and we'll have these chats. But and I'll just say this about the whole Snowbirds thing, which is that the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, which plays at Christie Pitts, they have an event today. I'm going to be at this event to announced the new team, the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, not the hockey team. But the owner of this team is a guy named Keith Stein. And I was chatting with Keith yesterday, and Keith will not be at this event today. And I'm like, where are you, Keith? Keith is busy with the WPBL, which is the Women's Professional Baseball League, and he's in the USA right now. And I realized that, yes, I've made a choice for myself that I'm not crossing the border. And there are people out there for business reasons or for other reasons like yourself who are crossing the border. And you're not dead to me. You know, I don't like it. And I'll tell you I don't like it. But at the same time, that won't dissolve our friendship or our business relationship. I don't want to be this super judgy guy when it comes to these items. Just don't tell me you're homophobic or racist or misogynist or something like that. But I just thought I'd shout out that I'm at this event today and just tell you very quickly here, Gerry, that the Leafs play at Christie Pitts. It starts on Mother's Day. And the ticket costs you $0.00. And I think at a time when you have to mortgage your home to go to take your family to a Jays game or a Leafs game or a Raptors game, I think it's amazing. You can fill the hill, sit on the hill, take in some pro baseball, have a dog, have a beer, and no mortgage required, Gerry. So if you're ever in town, I'm taking you to a Leafs game.
Well, that's great. I mean, anytime you can get the family out and not, have to
mortgage the home.
But, I will make a very interesting point.
Yeah.
And this kind of sticks to your theme. And I'm not trying to convince you that you should be traveling down to the States.
Mm-hmm.
But why should we let a few bad apples spoil the whole bunch? And, we're not going to, Hawaii is a democratic state. And here's what I know for sure when it comes to politics. You're going to be influenced by those that you look up to. And, this close friend of ours is Mike Harcourt, and Mike and Becky came and spent the night with us last Sunday. And we went out for dinner with them, and they really are, Mike and Becky I think Mike's 84 and Becky's maybe 2 years younger. And they're such lovely people. They've almost, Melissa and I both agree, my wife is Melissa, we feel like this is almost, because our parents have moved on to higher places, they've kind of taken that role that we can kind of ask that next generation these questions. But Mike is very left-wing. He's such a cheerleader of society. He's out there at this stage in life trying to build and help anybody who is the underdog, trying to help them. An underdog because of the society they grew up in. So I think the biggest thing about today's world, in order for you to survive, you want to be open-minded and just try and understand the other side of the argument. I don't have a strong opinion about the Trump administration or the previous Biden administration. I just don't get into it. I've been raised and groomed in our industry to really take a nonpartisan view, right down the middle, understand the arguments, and just try and manage things as best as we can. And I think that's what we're doing with Maui as well, is that these people are, for the first time in my life, when people know we're Canadians, they come up to us at the golf club at King Kamehameha in Maui, and they say, these older ladies that I haven't met before are sitting there having lunch as we come in, and they, oh, I hear you're Canadian. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That's no reflection on how we feel about you. So I think that it's a bigger U.S. problem than it is Canadians aren't coming down to the States. They're making a choice. No. America, these people up in Maui or down in Maui are saying, sorry. That doesn't reflect how much we love the Canadians. So I think that's kind of that second level, Mike, of how far entrenched we are to realize that it's just a terrible situation for the American people.
And for the Canadians who want to spend some cold winter months in the USA, then I'm glad you're there for them, because those rules are not simple. And if you think it's as simple as some ignorant snowbird says, oh, you just got to stay under 6 months, I think they're not realizing the immigration, the tax, the healthcare, the residency rules. They don't all work the same way. So I'm just kind of going to shout out any listeners who are in that boat that I'm glad Gerry Scott is there, and I highly recommend Gerry Scott. And Gerry, I'm itching to talk a little music with you.
Yeah, and I'll sum it up. The second book should be out in the next. We're hoping the next 2 weeks. But the tagline is this. This is the tagline about life. What you don't know will hurt you, and there you are. That's all you need to know about the book.
Yeah, it's confusing to us lay people, but you've got the experts on call, and these cross-border complications are avoidable if you know the rules and you make them easier to understand. So I'm glad you're doing that. It's been amazing working with you. And I didn't actually bang this point home at the beginning before we segue to music here, is that you're in BC. You hear that there's a TMLX, a Toronto Mike Listener Experience at Great Lakes Brewery, which happens to be in South Etobicoke. You're in BC. And the way I remember it is you found out that I was turning 50 years old that day. And you just very suddenly and quickly and got on a plane, came to Toronto, showed up at Great Lakes Brewery to wish me a happy birthday. And I know you kind of played it off like, hey, there's these things called planes and you can get from Vancouver to Toronto. But I'm just here to tell you there are, close family members that wouldn't even consider doing that. And I never forgot that you did that. And I just want to make sure you know how much it meant to me that you did that just to wish me happy birthday in person on my 50th birthday. I thought that was amazing, Gerry.
Well, that's those are very kind words, and you know what? I love good people, and you and I've always had this great chemistry between us, and we're just a couple of guys trying to raise our families and spread the good values amongst the people we bring into this world, and it just the stars aligned. It so happens Melissa was away with the kids. I think they went to Europe, and I just had to get someone to look after the family dog. And I think I was only out there for 24 hours. I jumped on the plane and came out, and we flew out in the morning. We hit your afternoon, and I had another good friend of mine, Sean Darchibald, show up with us. Another good friend that I love spending time with. And then the next day, I'm just jumping on the plane, and I'm next morning or afternoon, you jump on the plane and you're back in Vancouver.
Amazing. Like, that's amazing.
And yeah. So it's, you know what? Like I say, it's just that effort. And I don't want to make it sound like we're so high and mighty. It was important for me as it was important for you. And there you are. You make decisions and you hope they're the right ones. And
right.
And so we enjoyed it as much as you did.
Wow. Mind blown.
The pasta was good. I think I'm not a drinker. I think I had one beer, and I talked to some great friends of yours that speak highly of that were at the party as well. So it was fun. It was an outdoor event. It was the old time. It's what we did in the olden days. Our parents would talk about.
Right.
These things are important. Make time for others.
Like, I'm going to have another one. You don't have to show up to this one, Gerry, but the last Thursday of June, which I think it's June 25th, but I have to check my calendar. My calendar on the wall here is from May 1986, so I got to be careful not to check that calendar. But that's because it's a Blue Jays calendar from Shoppers Drug Mart here. But I will have another TMLX event, which of course are free events with free beer. Well, your first beer is on the house. Maybe that's why you stopped at one, Gerry. And then Palma Pasta feeds you, and it's delicious Italian food. But you do know, Gerry, and I don't, you'll be busy this day as well. I don't expect to see you this day. But there is an event May 21st at the El Macombo, and I'm making my El Macombo debut, performing a one-man show for 90 minutes, and that's happening, Gerry. So I just wanted to let the listenership know they can buy tickets now by going to torontomike.com and clicking Elmo Gig at the top. And I hope to see... I just learned from Peter Gross he bought a ticket. So Peter Gross told me he spent $4 to see the Beatles, and he spent $65 to see me. So I got to perform for Peter, and I hope to see more FOTMs in the audience.
Well, that's great. Well, I'm gonna release the sad news. I'm flying to Maui for 3 days.
Right.
Yeah, and then I'm coming home. I have a birthday that
Right.
I'm sure that my family's got planned, and then I'm flying to Switzerland on the 25th.
Well, that'll be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, I've never been there before. We're going with our dealer has a trip planned, and then we're going a few days early with with friends of ours. The four of us are going to spend an extra 5 days in Switzerland. So
Wow.
I can say that that's a busy, 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 busy period. Um, and I'm still looking at my schedule. If there's a way that I can fire up the private jet and
Wow.
make it out to your house, well, then that's what we will do.
Wow. Okay. Uh, I asked you off the top, have you met Anne Marie? And you hadn't met Anne Marie because she's the one who introduced the term snowbird to me. But have you ever met Willie Nelson?
Well, you're setting me up. The answer is yes. These are stories that we can share with the grandkids and we can share with your listeners as well as, so here's a story how we met Willie Nelson in Maui. I'm golfing with a fellow his name is Don Nelson. He was a sixth man on the Boston Celtics during their era, in the late 60s, early 70s when they were winning championships. Well, it started with Don Nelson. He was a member of the club at King Kamehameha. I told the front desk, just tell Don Nelson that we have mutual friends. It so happens that we met Mick Fleetwood from the Fleetwood Mac along the way. And just to let him know that we have mutual friends and I'd like to play some golf with him. Well, Coach Nelly, who now lives in Paia in Maui, he calls me up half an hour later and says, "Hi, this is Coach. We're playing golf tomorrow. You're going to join us." So we started a relationship with Don Nelson, playing golf with him and another fellow of his since then has passed, a guy named Duffy. And there was just the two of them. And I think Coach would bring his dog Bella along as well. I mean, this is a very, very casual golf. Coach plays in his bare feet. And after golfing with him about 4 or 5 times, I guess I'm being screened and interviewed to see what kind of person I am. Takes a phone call on the golf course, and this is around Christmas time. This is a few years back now. And he says, "Hey, do you play poker?" And Mike, I've never really sat down and had a live poker match with anybody,
Right.
but I played a little bit online, Texas Hold'em and stuff like everybody else. And I went, "Oh shit, yeah, I play poker all the time." So anyhow, be careful what you do and how cocky you are, and you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. But he says, we're playing poker tonight at Willie Nelson's house. Pick me up at 3. This is Christmas Eve. And I called my wife and I said, "Hey, listen, I've been asked to play poker. What should I do?" And she says, "Well, you got to play." Well, I'm so naive. I had to go to the front desk and I said, "How much money do I need to play poker with these guys?" And I'll tell you the number. And it's not to impress anybody because I came from nothing. My mom and dad were just hardworking people. But they said, "You need $5,000. You should probably come to the table with $5,000." So I had to go to the bank, First Hawaiian Bank, and I didn't have an account with them, but I said, "I need $5,000." And they were able to quickly transfer money over. I might even used a credit card or cash
Wow.
advance or something. And I show up with $5,000. I pick Coach up. We head over to Willie's house, and there was a few interesting people at the table, including Willie's son Lucas, which is a great artist himself. He has a band called The Promise of the Real. And I show up, and I put $1,500 on the table and $3,500 in my sock. And I said, I'm gonna play, and it was basically dealer's choice. Every time you're the dealer, you got to pick what game you're playing. So anyhow, we played poker till like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a Christmas Eve morning. And I have to say, I hadn't smoked weed or done anything. I'm pretty liberal person. I just not a crazy guy. And probably the first time that I've been experiencing weed in 35 years, and it was quite comical because Willie Nelson, the whole myth around Willie is the weed, and everybody's smoking it all kinds of different ways, and then we end up playing poker, and I'm safe to say that I pretty well realized that if I lose money, I'm going to be asked to come back.
Right.
If I win money, I'm going to be asked to come back the next day to get all their money back.
Right.
So anyhow, I end up for $1,500 I spent, and that's what I lost, and that was a great experience. I've been invited back a few times since then, and it's just fun. I mean, it's so surreal to. I can't say I'm a huge Willie Nelson fan of his music. I got to know Lucas over the years a little bit more because he's been on tour and we still play golf occasionally in Maui. He's become such a big star now that he doesn't have much time for little guys like me in the world. But it still was a nice little story to share with everybody, and it was quite comical.
So you got high with Willie Nelson.
Yeah, just like that Toby Keith song.
Well,
I'll never smoke with Willie again.
Well, I would get a T-shirt made that said I got high with Willie Nelson. I wouldn't shut up about that. I would be telling everybody I meet for the rest of my life, I smoked weed with Willie Nelson.
Well, you got to remember, I wrote a book on immigration, crossing borders.
Right.
And that's probably not the best shirt you want to wear.
You know what?
Because it's in the state, weed is federally legal in the States, but not statewide. So, Mike, that was a hell of an idea that we probably will never ever go on with the Willie Nelson shirt. But
no, you know what? I forgot about that. Another thing to consider. Another thing you could consider when you buy the book, Best of the Snowbirds Expat Radio Podcast. Canadians heading south for the winters. What you don't know will hurt you. Gerry, I love talking to you. I love producing your show. I love you as a buddy, as a friend. And I'm glad we could do this episode, even though I shake my fist at all those Canadians going down south for pleasure. They're doing it, and if they're going to do it, I just want them to know the rules and to make sure they don't get into any trouble. And that's where you come in, Gerry.
Well, thank you, Mike. I enjoy the podcast. I don't listen to it as much as I should. As you mentioned, we were 1893. And every time people throw numbers out at me, I think, okay, 18 is Darcy Rhoda, and 93 is Ryan Nugent Hopkins, I believe it is. So
it's Doug Gilmour.
Oh, Doug Gilmour was 93. Okay, out here in the West. I forgot about Doug Gilmour. Great hockey player, great Kingston boy, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Kingston?
100%. Big, probably my favorite player of all time, Doug Gilmour.
Really? Remember that goal against St. Louis behind the net?
Against Curtis Joseph, I'll never forget.
Curtis Joseph. Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been, I appreciate you having us as a guest on the show. I know we can talk music forever. I've got some great documentaries I've been listening to, audio books on Peter Frampton and Tom Petty and all these guys. So you want to get connected to music, listen to their audio books.
Your next appearance will be more music-centric. But
here we are. You take care and good luck with the 21st. And if I get a chance to surprise you, I'm going to surprise you if I can.
And remind people one more time, how can they contact you, Gerry Scott?
Well, if you need the app, you can download the app for free. It's not going to break the bank. The book is, you do have to buy the book. We got to find a way to pay the bill somehow. But yeah, you can go to Amazon and that's probably the quickest, easiest. And if you have Amazon Prime, you get free shipping. It's on Kindle, it's on paperback, and it's on hardcover. And I think you can enjoy it. And I think the second book, Canadians Returning and Expats Moving to Canada for the first time, that is going to be a very, very in-depth book. And these books are filled with case studies, so I think they're a little easier to read with case studies or scenarios. So you can put the complicated stuff into a story format. So I think it's going to be a great resource. And once again, I apologize if we confuse people even more, because this is a confusing thing we do.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,893rd show, 1893. Go to TorontoMike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Buy a ticket or two to the Elmo. And much love to all who made this possible. Again, that's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, Nick Ianni's, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, and Ridley Funeral Home. See you all in about a half an hour with Larry Fedoruk.